Okay, so I don't know. I feel like things always happen on a Friday. Big stories break on a Friday. And as I just mentioned with Chris, but in case you haven't seen it, there is some breaking news. This absolutely bonkers story that just posted tonight concerning, well, the clown car of people who make up Trump's cabinet. And I mean, this time it's really focused on FBI Director Kash Patel. And it's an explosive news story in The Atlantic that just posted. It cites dozens of FBI sources, which is a big deal. It's a lot of sources in this story detailing new allegations about Patel, including some sources who say Patel is frequently drunk on the job, regularly absent from work, and paranoid about getting fired. And there's quite an anecdote about that we're going to talk about. And I'm just going to read you a few of the key passages because I think that will tell you everything you need to know about this story. Here's one. Several officials told The Atlantic that Patel's drinking has been a recurring source of concern across the government. Early in his tenure, meetings and briefings had to be rescheduled for later in the day as a result of his alcohol-fueled nights. 6 current and former officials and others familiar with Patel's schedule told The Atlantic. As a sidebar, not normal. I've worked in 2 administrations. Again, back to the quote. On multiple occasions in the past year, members of his security detail had difficulty waking Patel because he was seemingly intoxicated. This was Chris was just referencing. And that's according to information supplied to Justice Department and White House officials. A request for breaching equipment, normally used by SWAT and hostage rescue teams to quickly gain entry into buildings, was made last year because Patel had been unreachable behind locked doors, according to multiple people familiar with the request. Multiple officials also tell The Atlantic that Patel is deeply concerned that his job is in jeopardy. Well, that's understandable. In one incident earlier this month, Patel struggled to log into an internal computer system. He quickly became convinced that he had been locked out, and he panicked, frantically calling aides and allies to announce that he had been fired by the White House, according to 9 people familiar with his outreach. 9 people. Now, the access problem turned out to, quote, have been a technical error, and it was quickly resolved, and that's according to 2 people familiar with the matter. Now, I should note MS Now has not independently verified any of this reporting. We've reached out to the FBI for comment, and if we get a response over the next hour, I will surely let you know as soon as we get a response. But I should note the FBI responded to The Atlantic with a graceful and eloquent statement attributed to Patel, and here's what he said. Print it, all false. I'll see you in court. Bring your checkbook. Graceful, eloquent. Okay. Joining me now is the reporter who broke that story, staff writer for The Atlantic, Sarah Fitzpatrick. First of all, Sarah, I'm so grateful you could be here because we saw this story and we reached out and we were like, can you come talk to us about it? And here you are. I want to talk to you about all the details of this bombshell report. I just skimmed the story, the service there, I should say. But first, I just want to give you an opportunity to respond to this reaction to your piece, because Patel's advisor, Erica Knight, called your piece fabricated stories. She said that every serious D.C. reporter passed on. Sarah Fitzpatrick and Jeffrey Goldberg printed it anyway. Lawsuit is being filed. What do you say to that?
I say that I am a very careful, very diligent, award-winning investigative reporter with a history of award-winning work across multiple organizations. You and I, in fact, have worked together previously. I stand by every word of this reporting. We have excellent attorneys, and it is a surprising statement, but a very telling statement, I believe. And I would also note, we reached out for comment to the White House and to the Justice Department, neither of which disputed anything. We gave multiple opportunities, including 19 detailed questions. So we stand by every word. And look, this is telling because there are so many people. You alluded to it earlier. These are not the types of people who are willing to speak out outside of the FBI, especially right now, because Kash Patel is going after people with polygraphs in a way that has never happened at the Bureau. So for it to be this level of alarm, this is people genuinely concerned that America is in danger as a result of this conduct. And I feel, a real responsibility to take care of that reporting incredibly carefully. And The Atlantic is nothing but diligent, and we have amazing lawyers and amazing editors, and I stand by every word.
I'm not surprised in any way by their response. I will say, and you, as you said, you note, and I noted 9 sources for the opening anecdote of the story as well. Let's get into some of the details about this, because Patel's excessive drinking seems to be what is alarming a lot of the sources in here. There are multiple anecdotes that refer to that. That's understandable. They're moving meetings. People couldn't wake him. What more have you heard about the extent of his drinking habits and how it seems to be affecting his ability to serve as FBI director?
I think the key point is that this is happening in places in which it is public. There are lots and lots of people around who are seeing it, who are hearing about it, who are learning about it. For example, we have video of Patel chugging a beer to excess on video.
We've all seen it. Everybody's seen it. Yes.
And I think it speaks to, he was on official travel at that time. There were ongoing threats in the United States at that time. So, it is a very, very clear pattern that has occurred in multiple locations over a long period of time. And it's that pattern which is giving everyone pause. These are not one-off events.
I just read this story, but we have to come back to it, because the excerpt I just read, just to remind people, a request for breaching equipment normally used by SWAT and hostage rescue teams to quickly gain entry into buildings was made last year because Patel had been unreachable behind locked doors, according to multiple people familiar with this request. I find that, I've traveled with 2 presidents. I've worked in the government. I've worked in the State Department. Shocking. Really, people should feel shocked by that. This is not a 22-year-old who's irresponsible, who's on a trip and should be behaving better. This is the FBI director. Can you tell us more just about that scene, or paint it for people who have not yet read your story?
I think the really most important thing here is that most national security officials at this caliber, or even several layers below, those types of people sleep with their phones on their chest. They are so concerned because they need to be reachable immediately, because there are life or death decisions that have to be made quickly. There may be threats in which they need to be moved quickly. And so this timing aspect, the ability to reach that person quickly and make sure that they are responsive, I think this is a request that was not made lightly. And I think that's the fact that it was made and that it was well known, I think because of that level of concern, really tells you about, the kind of larger picture here. And look, the FBI is, you and I both know so many people that have given their lives to this organization. This is a place protecting.
Are still giving their lives, to be clear, still in there.
Yes, and the threats have never been higher. The risks have never been higher. And so you have a group of people that have totally, the biggest fear would be that something could happen to this person. And I think they take that responsibility incredibly seriously. But that goes beyond the entire organization. You have an organization that is dependent on this person being available, being cogent, and being able to quickly respond to multiple things all at the same time.
The opening anecdote of the story was incredibly striking for a number of reasons. Because you described this freak out in which Patel was intoxicated. He thinks he was locked out of an FBI.
No, to be clear, he wasn't.
He was not in that case. Thank you for
correcting.
It just broke some. I'm trying to remember all the details of it. Thank you for correcting me there. But he thought he was locked out of an FBI computer system. He grew incredibly paranoid. Thought he was going to be fired. It turned out to be a technical issue. Talk about that level of paranoia, what that tells you, why it was important to kind of lead with that anecdote in the story.
The anecdote was just incredibly telling for a couple of reasons. One is that it set off such a panic within the FBI and within Washington. It set off a panic in Congress. The White House was fielding calls. There was a real lack of understanding about who was in charge at a given moment, which, as you know, as a former member of government, is an incredibly important who is in charge at a given moment. But I also think it speaks to character and impulsivity and the ability to, be in a stressful situation and think about what those next steps are. And I think it is also emblematic of other occasions that we have seen that are very public, in which information has been shared by the FBI director, which was not yet, that went beyond what the investigation was ready to make public at that time, and that later had to be walked back. And in multiple cases that we have seen, all very publicly reported, the fact that this has impacted the investigation, this has impacted their ability to pursue people that were potentially mass shooters or other things of that nature. So I think it was a very telling anecdote, but it's not unusual for those that are familiar with his behavior and his temperament.
Erratic is not what you want in that job. They need stability, and that's what you need in that job.
But also remember that, there's a bit of an irony here, which is that one of the major purposes within our legal system is that the FBI comes in often when you are in court and comes in and they are providing the information, swearing that it is fact under law. Like there's so much work that goes on into putting a fact into the public record in lawsuit. And so, again, the jumping ahead of waiting for verification is just incredibly telling. Because every other FBI employee, if they were to make that same mistake, would be fired.
That's what they're taught through their whole careers, is to operate in that manner. Patel's been now in office for 14 months. He clearly is almost 14 months trying to hold on to this job. Why do you think he's still there?
It's interesting. I think that he has at times a very close relationship with the president. And the president views the Justice Department as a means to go after his perceived political enemies and punish them, either by harassment, expensive legal suits, by firing them from jobs, believing that there are deep state people within the national security and the justice system. So I think that Patel has been very willing to take those requests, those orders that come directly from the president, and use the resources of the FBI to direct them towards those kinds of personal projects of the president. And that's really, really important here, because you only have so many people, you only have so much time, and you have to decide as the FBI director, are you pulling people away from following a terrorist? Are you pulling people away from monitoring people who are abusing children? Are you pulling people away from other crimes that are really, really significant and have massive harm? And I spoke to so many officials who said to me, this is what I worry about at night. I cannot sleep at night because I'm worried that I may have pulled something away from somewhere and I've had to reorganize something, and people may be harmed as a result. And so I think that was the really sobering thing that stuck with me throughout this reporting, that I would want every American watching to really think about, because we are at a moment of unprecedented threats. That is not an overstatement. We have unprecedented threats, and we have to make sure that our resources are used accordingly.
Sarah Fitzpatrick, this is a really incredible story. Everybody should read it just to understand who's running our government right now. Thank you so much for hustling your way over here and helping really give us more meat on the bones of the piece. Thank you again.
Thanks for having me.